All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate this. This is an up-close and personal visit with those who are willing to run and serve as our elected officials. So we really appreciate all of you who came out tonight. I'm Mary Wilkerson, President of the Marshall Business and Residents Association, and this is our annual MBRA candidates meeting. The MBRA has been around for decades and is a 100% volunteer organization. And we are a 501c4 action advocacy group. Our mission statement is to protect and enhance the quality of community and professional life in Marshall. So we also have, there are newsletters back there if you'd like to get this. We actually have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to and keep up with the latest in Marshall. And you can also catch our past meeting videos are there. There are a few more meeting videos that are yet to be uploaded, but our newsletters are also there too. So all the minutes of our meetings, if for some reason you can't come due to schedule or work or weather, you can always catch the detailed minutes on the back of page 1. And also, if you want to make sure that you're coming to an MBRA sponsored event, because there has been some confusion in the past, just look for the MBRA logo, and that means you're in an authentic, actual MBRA sponsored event. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get right to our candidates time, because we have about half a dozen candidates, limited amount of time. We want y'all to get to know them as much as we can. And the candidates will speak for approximately 5 minutes. They have about 10 minutes time. And so a portion of that time will be speaking, a portion of that time will be answering questions. And we have collected some questions from people. If anyone has a form that they haven't turned in with a question for one of the candidates, now would be the time to get them to me. And then also, if we have time, there will be time for questions directly to the audience members. So, our first candidate of the night is our good friend, Duke Bland. He is always here giving us updates on the Fauquier County Public Schools. So, Duke, would you like to come?
It would be my pleasure. Thank you. I really don't think I need that from you. I'm good. Folks, again, thank you. Mary Lee McDaniel could not be here tonight. She had a previous engagement. And as many as you all know, Mary Lee and I have had a great professional and working relationship over the years. She's always been just a phone call away. We've often met for coffee or lunch just to talk about different opinions and work to bridge any gaps that we may have. And whenever there is a joint meeting of the two boards, the Board of Supervisors and the school board, you would notice that Mary Lee and I are always sitting beside each other so that we can compare and share notes and later discuss, okay? But sorry that she couldn't be here. Now, I wrote what I'm going to say down because most of you know that I'm a talker, and when I start talking, I might get off the subject and everything and not, communicate all the things that I wanted to talk about tonight. So I'm going to read from this so I can stay on time.
Go.
Go, okay. As many of you know, I am a product of Fauquier, having grown up here near the Plains and attending and graduating Fauquier County Public Schools. Class of 1971 Fauquier High School.
Yay.
Yay. My wife and 3 sons also grew up here, of course, and they all graduated Fauquier High School as well. And right now I have grandkids in Fauquier High School. I'm currently vice chair of the school board and have served as chair and vice chair during my nearly 15-year tenure on the board. I've also chaired a number of committees and currently serve as chair of the building committee. And here's something else you probably don't know, you may not know. I'm also a board member of the Mountain Vistas Governor School. And I've been a board member of the Mountain Vistas Governor School for over 8 years, and I'm currently serving as chair, and I've served as chair of the Mountain Vistas Governor School for over 3 years. Now, the one question I get all the time, and it's probably in one of those, is how and why did you get involved with the school board? Well, as I've mentioned before, having 3 kids going through the school system, my wife and I were always involved in our school's interests and activities. We served on the PTOs, ad hoc committees, got involved with fundraisers, went on field trips, and we did the unthinkable. We actually chaperoned our kids' dances. I started attending school board meetings more frequently when the closing of Clark Thompson Elementary School was at the forefront. I soon became a spokesperson for Save the Clark Thompson Elementary School. Bronnie Lamberley was Marshall's school board member at the time, and Bronnie died unexpectedly on Christmas morning back in 2004. And the school board was challenged at the time to find another candidate that could be there to fulfill that position until the following fall, when they could have a special election to fill that position permanently. And I was asked by a number of community folks if I would throw my hat in the arena and really think about it and interview for the position, which I did. And I was called back for a second interview and was later offered the position on a temporary basis. And they said, hey, look, if you like it, if you like what you're doing, you can petition to be on the ballot in the fall. If not, you can just walk away from it. Well, folks, I've been here for 15 years. I have a passion for education, I have a passion for the kids, and I have a passion for my community. Now, some of the highlights of my career, I helped save the Clark Thompson Elementary. It helped secure funding for renovation and an addition for that community school. I served on the building committee and secured funding for construction of Kettle Run High School and Greenville Elementary School at the time. I was chair and still chair of the building committee when funding was obtained and renovation commenced on Fauquier High School. And every year, I make sure that our 3 community schools, Coleman, Marshall Middle School, and Thompson, get its fair share of the capital improvement budget and the comprehensive maintenance program. And it keeps our schools looking good and functioning well. And it's very inviting to our students and our parents and our staff and our administrators. You know, the one good thing that makes me feel really good is when I went to the back to school nights for these 3 schools, as I've done over the years. And if there are parents coming into that school for the very first time, particularly those that are coming in from other school districts, and we talk about the history of Clark Thompson, we talk about the history of Coleman and Marshall Middle School, and when they find out how old those schools are, they can't believe it. They say, you're kidding. You are kidding. This school is, 18, 20, 25, 30, 40 years old, 50 years old for Clark Thompson. And they'll tell you, the school district that I just left and the school that my kids were in, the school was only 8 years old or 9 years old. And it looks nothing like this. And that makes me really proud that we have the interest in our community, the Board of Supervisors funding to keep those schools looking like they do. I've sat on interviews and selection committees for 2 superintendents and 1 interim superintendent, but keeping safety is my top priority, and it always will be. I have worked diligently with the Board of Supervisors, particularly Mary Lee, to secure funding to have officers in our schools. And a huge shout out to that man back there, Sheriff Mosier, who worked very hard and right along beside us to make this all happen, folks. We have added upgraded camera systems, much of it through grant money. And believe me, an uneventful school day is a good day for me. I sleep well at night. I found out yesterday that all of our schools are fully accredited. We have one that's accredited with conditions, with one condition. That was Taylor Middle School. We were just below the threshold in English. But we already have an action plan to address that. Fauquier Public Schools also earned top honors recently from the Virginia Department of Education for improving outcomes significantly for students with disabilities. And some of you may have read or heard about the Wendy Hill Foundation and its relationship or partnership with Fauquier County Public Schools. We have just received a grant from the Virginia Department of Education for $149,740. It was one of only 28 grants in the state. And that grant is to enhance our regular academic programs. It's a new program called Horizon. So those monies will be going into that particular program. We have kids from the kindergarten through the 4th grade that will be attending after-school enhancements and enrichment programs at Clark Thompson. And for grades 5 through 8, it will happen right here next door over at the Bland and Graham Learning Den. Folks, I am proud to have served this community for over 15 years. Better yet, I am honored. I deeply appreciate your trust, your input, your guidance and support. I am your representative. I serve you. I am not a politician. I am your representative. I see you standing up, so my 5 minutes is up.
Yes, sir.
My 5 minutes is up. Did I do okay?
We have questions for you.
Oh, questions, okay. Okay.
Why has the policy on how head lice is handled in the schools changed? Head lice is very contagious
Absolutely.
and hard to get rid of it, and if the proper steps are not taken in treating those with it, as well as bed linen, furniture, and carpets in the home. The schools no longer call parents to come get children.
I'm gonna tell you the truth, I don't know. I didn't know that policy had changed. I don't really get into some of the nuances of all those policies. We get so many policies that come out all the time, folks. So something like that, I'm gonna have to get back to Frank Finn on to find out. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know why we don't call anymore to get kids to be picked up once that's discovered.
Okay, thank you. And then this question is, let's see. What percentage of students in the Fauquier County school system are illegal aliens? What is the number?
I don't know. Well, you would have to define, I guess, who are illegal aliens, because I'm not sure, how one goes about keeping track on who is an illegal alien and who is not. But no matter what, if you're in the school, our county schools and its administration and faculty is committed to serving that child, whether they are legal, illegal, or whatever.
Okay, thank you. And then this question, how can small business help local Marshall schools?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. We, at one time, we had a program that we're gonna start back up, where you, the business owner, can go online and match up with the school and let the schools know what you have available. And the schools and the teachers and the staff will get together and invite that business in for further discussion. I do know that our CTE programs in November or December, Ms. Fry had asked that she come and be a spokesperson here, because she wants to tie that right into what you were just talking about. Our CTE programs, where we have kids that are graduating schools and they're looking for jobs, either in culinary arts or in mechanics, or let's see, hairdressers, nursing programs. We're tying all of that stuff in to the businesses that will be looking for the kids who want to be part of that program. Also, there are still a number of businesses like Joe's here and Nick's here that invite activities and fundraisers on their properties, and that's another great thing.
Thank you. Given that SCPS has allowed, supported, and even encouraged student walkouts for political causes such as wanting more gun control, would SCPS equally support such walkouts for the opposing viewpoint?
That would be something that would be taken up one case at a time. I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no. We have to look at it one case at a time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You got the bulk of the questions tonight so far, so thank you very much.
I thought we get questions about the budget and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about the budget and all of these things. That question on the headlights thing, if you would let me, I would like to take that and get an answer, sure, and get it to the right person. So is that person's name and contact number on that sheet?
No, there's no contact number.
Okay. If whoever wants to talk to me after this, like at 8:30 or something?
They couldn't be here tonight.
Oh, they couldn't be here. Okay. You know who it is?
Yes.
Okay, then I can get the answer to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and now Sheriff Mosher. Thank you, come on down. This is our Fauquier County Sheriff Mosher, and we look forward to hearing you speak tonight.
Okay, great, thank you so much. First off, I have to ask Duplan if I get an excuse for being late. I'm tardy, but that was tardy because I was backing up.
In school suspension.
In school, okay. There we go. I was tardy because I was backing up one of our deputies on the way up here tonight to be part of this forum. And this is especially unique for me, this forum, because I tell you, I don't know if you realize this, but in 2015, this was the first forum that I attended with the Commercial Business Owners Association. Ursula Baxley sent me an invitation, and I came up here, and that was the very first forum, so it was great to be here. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I really appreciate putting this on. Do you mind if I ask a question to the audience? How many candidates do we have here tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. You know what? Before I get started, I have to say this. Anybody that throws their hat in the ring for public office, right? Yeah. Okay, that was not an echo from the back of the room. I just want you to know that's what it is. But I mean, the thing you have to remember for anyone that would put their hat in the ring for public office, that they bring different ideas and different thoughts to the process, and it's something that we should admire for each one of the candidates. So please know that I share that admiration for those who are in the arena, for lack of a better term, on these things. One thing I would like to talk about, and I'll just kind of go through it. You know, when I came into office in 2016, I made certain promises that we would do certain things, and you know, I will tell you that in the first 100 days we achieved those things, and included things like updating information in social media, getting out there, be more transparent, daily activity reports, enhanced enforcement, marking our police cars, making sure that we have more marked cars that are visible for the public. And one of the big ones that came out of it had to do with law enforcement accreditation. Well, I'm happy to say, if you don't know this already, your sheriff's office is a fully accredited law enforcement agency. We achieved accreditation in July of 2018, and we were awarded an initial accreditation. And you're probably saying, well, what does that mean? And schools have to be accredited, do they not? Yeah. So you want to know that the people who are teaching your children, the people who are engaged in law enforcement, or if you go to the doctor, you want to know that they have an accreditation certificate on the wall if they're going to work on you. Well, why should it be any different for law enforcement? And so there is the Virginia Law Enforcement Professional Standards Commission that gives the accreditation, and I want you to know, the men and women at the Sheriff's Office, they worked very hard over the time from 2016 to 2018, and we had 100% accreditation in all areas of 190 standards with over 700 proofs of compliance that had to be demonstrated. We had no minors, we had no major fails, and we had no waivers. So that means that we hit every aspect. And this includes training, operations, and administration, and what we do. Now, how many law enforcement agencies do you think we have in Virginia? Anybody in the crowd? Interactive? Come on. A lot? Okay, I'm going to use a round number. It's about 340, maybe upwards of that, about that number. Now, how many of those agencies do you think are accredited law enforcement agencies?
15%.
15%.
I would say 25%.
It is 25. That's pretty good. Okay, I don't have a prize for you. I'm just not. Sorry, dude. I have to work on that. But no, we are in the top 25%. There are only 99, might be 100 now, law enforcement agencies that are accredited in Virginia. So that is that's where we stand in the lineup with our neighbors in law enforcement, not only within Fauquier but also within the region. So we're looked at differently, and that's just one of the things. Next thing I'll touch on is the aspect of the opioid crisis, and we have taken measures, and I'm happy to announce, if you've been keeping up with the recent articles in the Fauquier Times, thank you, James, the paper doing that. There's a letter to the editor. Hopefully it'll be published tomorrow that talks about the opioid crisis, and our aspect from the Sheriff's Office is prevention, enforcement, and recovery. So the schools, operation prevention provided by the DEA, we've given that information to the school division, and they've implemented some of this in some of the elementary schools, or as age appropriate, which is really important to be able to stop it before it gets to be a problem with some children. The enforcement piece, folks, we're going to do our job. We're going to make arrests. We're going to find out who's involved in the illegal distribution of drugs, and then we're going to work with our Commonwealth Attorney, our U.S. Attorney in the region, through different things that we're involved in, so that'll continue. But the recovery phase, the people that do become part of the criminal justice system, what happens to them? Well, they get into the system, they detox, and then what do you do at that point? Well, I'm happy to tell you, by working with our CSB, our Community Services Board, if you're not familiar with them, we have a new director. I say new, it's been about a year, right, probably, but he's been a new director from when I started. And we now have medically assisted treatment at the Fauquier County Adult Detention Center first. And we're probably one of 3 jurisdictions around the Commonwealth that are using a new drug. Well, new to us, Vivitrol is what it's called, but there's working with the CSB and Big Pharma, they're giving a first dose for free, and then that can follow on after they're released from jail. The CSB will utilize Medicaid expansion and be able to give them the care that they'll need to complete the recovery process. It could last, they were telling me, 5 or 6 injections after that. Now that's a total of approximately, I think the shots, one shot is $1,000. But think about this. I realize it seems like a large sum, and it is, but think about the cost of rehabilitation and keeping people in jail or not being productive members of society. So if it works like it's supposed to, and like it has in other areas of the country, we could see a significant reduction in recidivism when it comes to this. So that's one of the things we're working on from that perspective. And I guess my time's up over here, so I'm not going to get tardy. I'm not going to get a tardy on this one. So I just want to stay out of trouble. Okay.
I have one question.
Okay,
for you.
please. Yeah.
And then, if you like, you could take whatever questions from the audience, because it's just one.
Okay.
After serving time, are illegal aliens released back into Fauquier County?
Okay, so the illegal alien question, so you got to get the documentation right on what we're talking about. You have undocumented aliens and you have criminal aliens, okay? Big difference. Criminal aliens are might come into our charge. So when we're involved in the community, making an arrest for a criminal violation of law, they're brought to the jail. We are required by law to run them through different databases. And so with that comes a notification that they may in fact be wanted by another jurisdiction. And that could be any jurisdiction. It could be Culpeper County. It could be Prince William County. It could be the FBI. It could be anybody. It could also be wanted by Homeland Security investigations or ICE. So if that happens, we receive notification, and then they can come and pick up that person. It's in our custody. So that's how we handle it. But remember now, the key here is criminal aliens. These are people that have committed crimes that has landed them in jail. Any other questions on that one? Yes, ma'am.
Well, what are the general demographics though, when you look at people being arrested in Fauquier County, like, do you know what groups they are in? Not zeroing in on illegal aliens, but do you get an idea of what type of people are?
Criminals. Okay, I can't tell you about that. I mean, when I talk about this, it's fair and impartial law enforcement as to what their ethnic background is, or their race, or whatever it might be. It's irrelevant.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah, it
get
is.
at. It just seems to me, I wouldn't think illegal aliens are a huge number of arrests. I might be wrong, but.
No, criminal aliens are not. I mean, they're not. I mean, it's just when we come in contact with them. Yeah.
And can I ask another question? How much is related to domestic violence?
Not
much?
No, not that I'm related to. I mean, when you say domestic violence, it could be assault and battery, but it may not be classified domestic violence. It could be, a physical assault. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I'm available afterwards if you have additional questions, please feel free. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, just one warning, when you leave it tonight, there are speed traps everywhere. Just saying. I know I use that a lot for people who've been here before, but it's true. Please be careful. These roads are dangerous. I mean, we're 660 square miles, and we do not have enough deputies to cover all of them. So some people try to take advantage of that. But I try to take advantage of that as well. And so just so you know, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You want to? Let's do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheriff Mosher, we appreciate that.
Can I have a quick?
Oh,
No.
please do, take a few. And our next speaker of the night is Angela Smith. She's running for our Commissioner of the Revenue. Thank you.
Good evening. For the first time in over 50 years, you, Fauquier County citizens, have the opportunity to vote for a new to the office Commissioner of Revenue. Why is this important? And you're probably thinking, I don't even know what the Commissioner of Revenue does. And how does that really impact you? And finally, and most importantly, why should you vote for me? Hope to clarify some of it, and if what I said doesn't make sense, I did print it out and you can take one with you. It might be a little clear. If I had to sum it down, and I'll have to say, I'm also a product of Fauquier County Schools, class of 79, so with Tommy and Laura and Duke and all the other fun people.
We're the more mature group.
Yes. My mom attended school here, my uncles attended school here, and my sisters. My cousin, Kevin Lee, is president of Oakview Bank, so we haven't traveled far. And I usually do yoga in this room, so I'm feeling very calm tonight. But back to the point at hand, what does the Commissioner of Revenue do? If I had to really simplify it down in two major points, first and foremost, it is making sure of all the ways that we have money, because Duke wants a lot for the school, Sheriff Bob wants a lot for the Sheriff's Department, we need a lot for our services and whatnot. The Commissioner of Revenue oversees the ways we get money into the county. And so the assessments for our real estate, our personal property, our business tax, and the like. We as taxpayers fund over 70% of all the things that go on in county. So thank you for keeping our county alive and continuing to grow. Second, and equally as important, the Commissioner of Revenue is that person in that office charged with providing meaningful data to our county leaders to guide them in policy decisions and tax changes. So us as the tax people, we just make sure you have fair assessments, get charged accordingly, and things of that sort. But in the bigger picture, it's so important, especially as we go forward, to make sure our county leaders, our Board of Supervisors, who, by the way, are very dedicated individuals, but it's a part-time job for them. They have their own professions and businesses that they take care of, so they do rely on county officials to provide them with good data. And at the end of the day, the Commissioner of Revenue's office is that direct link between the taxpayer and those Board of Supervisors. How does that impact you? In a number of ways. It greatly impacts your pocketbook, as far as what you may will be paying in taxes, your quality of life, your business, if you own a business here, and your kids, if your kids are educated here. And lastly, why should you vote for me, Angela Smith? Over the past 30 years, in both my profession and my volunteer service, I have been in service to this community. I have owned a business here since 1989. Upon graduation from Fauquier High School, I received a degree in accounting and finance from James Madison University, came back and served as a tax accountant for a number of years, and went on to be the executive director for our Chamber of Commerce and a business owner for the past 30 years. Additionally, I'm a glutton for punishment like all us local yokels. I served on our County Economic Development Committee, our signage task force. I've been on the board of the Main Street program, past president and board member of our Warrington Rotary Club, a group of business leaders, and numerous other activities. And why is this important? I like to be passionate about my community. I grew up here, all my family is still here, I've had a business here, all of my connections, it's what you do. And you know, so many times, and we've seen it grow and we've seen it change and whatnot, I hear a lot of times, well, they need to do this and they need to do that and they need to do this. Guess what, my friends? We are they. And so if we don't step up to do some of these things and put ourselves out there to make our community a better place, then others aren't going to. And I have to tell you, you said you're not a politician. I am so not a politician. The closest I ever got to political was about 10 years ago. Then out of the blue, the County Board of Supervisors says, we're gonna invoke a county meals tax. And they're like, but don't worry, it's not gonna affect any of the local citizens. It's not gonna affect what you pay in taxes. I'm like, I was in the hospitality business. I'm like, how can it not? I eat out, and I think all my neighbors do. And overnight, it was another layer of bureaucracy for our businesses that are in the hospitality business, an additional 6% on taxes for our localities and whatnot. And the chairman at that time said, it is inevitable and undeniable, we need this tax. They looked at the town of Warrington has a meals tax, which by the way is their largest revenue item. And I said, but this doesn't seem right. So on my own, purchased $3,000 worth of signs and put them out and went to the board meetings and stuff like that. Ended up on the front page of the Fauquier Times and saying, quoted as the sneaky tax, because it's like nobody realized. It did get shot down. I fear it might rear its ugly head again in a number of years, and I think we have a number of other challenges. Our county is beautiful. We all live here. We all love it. We've got a lot of green space. Our Board of Supervisors has done a great job in invoking conservation easement and land use and incentivizing for us to keep it green. That said, our program is maturing, and we don't know what the ramifications of that. And we have growing concerns and challenges over additional needs for funding for various things. A lot of you that especially live in this area, broadband internet is an issue, and we want to have it taken care of. It costs money. We want to update some of our schools. We want to increase our teacher salaries. It takes money. There's a number of other initiatives and services. It takes money. And how does that all balance out? Boils down to the Commissioner of Revenue's office and figuring out what we have as our resources, how do we be fair, first and foremost, to the taxpayers, and what can we do to make sure we have enough money to do that. So at the end of the day, I'm running because I care about this community. I care about all of us as citizens. I don't mind paying taxes. I don't want to pay any more than my fair share, and I want to make sure that it is fair. I'm running as an independent because I feel strongly that we can't be beholden to too many groups. This is constitutionally an independent office, not beholden to the Board of Supervisors or any other entity. And for that very purpose of the separation of powers, again, it is the most important for you as citizens of Fauquier to have this person that is willing to stand up, question in more than 2 or 3 ways, why? How can we do this better? How can we improve? And how can we make this a win-win for our citizens and for our community and continue to enjoy the quality of life we have in Fauquier? And on that note, I will open it up to any questions you might have.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Victoria?
How do you define fair?
There. Good, very good question, is that as a business owner for 30 years, I really learned fair because I realized everybody that was a customer was either a relative or a neighbor or served on a board with somebody else or somebody else. So you wanted to make sure it was equal treatment in all eyes on the law all the time. Right now, we have a number of policies that are it's not documented necessarily. You provide the document, you provide it yourself, and it's not police monitored. It is a complaint based. So we have land use policies, and again, I love that aspect of it, except for some people, well, my neighbor's doing it and maybe not going to the letter of the law. And we really have not really done a great job of making sure that everything that we have in place, not only are we doing it by the book, but we're also making sure that across the way that we are monitoring and enforcing and making sure that it's not abused and that things are not unfair. I don't know if that answers.
I've got a question. And I don't know if it starts with you or if it starts with other people in the county, but it would seem to me that, especially in the service districts, if we could get reasonable, clean industries that would help the tax base. I remember the one of the poor little Saab dealer in New Baltimore. Why he stuck with that, I have no idea, or Volvo dealer, whatever he was, to try to sell cars. But to get industry in those service districts, or just right outside those service districts, to help abate some of the tax burden on.
Absolutely. And one of the key things regarding putting the economic development aspect in the service districts is, especially in like Marshall, is making sure that we have the infrastructure, the water and sewer, the broadband internet, and those things that we need to have. And again, it goes back to really putting the priority there and running projections to figure out what is the upside, the revenue you get for the economic, and try to incentivize accordingly. Right now, we're doing a little bit of rewarding bad behavior somewhat. We're not monitoring, and we're relying on complaint-based only and self-policing. And I have to say, the man in the back of the room is my idol, and he's probably the reason why I'm up here running for office, because he was willing to step up and put himself out there. And I loved his approach to when he got in office. He ran it much like his campaign, is that sheriffs prior to you, I don't think anybody had any particular complaints with, but it wasn't at the level we need to be. And when he took office, he stepped it up a notch. He looked at what is it that we're doing well, where are the areas where we can improve, and how we can increase it. And I can tell you from over the years, and I've attended numerous Board of Supervisors, planning commissions, Board of Zoning Appeals, a number of public hearings, and I probably know more than I want to know, but there are opportunities in every sector to step that up somewhat, and I think we, as it all, would benefit, especially in the economic. I'm a business person first and foremost, so especially in the business arena, we need to make it more attractive. We need to incentivize the right things and do what we can to discourage unintentionally rewarding bad behavior.
And finding companies that are willing to help with the infrastructure. to help with
Partnerships.
some of the things
Yeah.
that, are the
Yeah.
proffers or whatever.
And I will say, Miles Friedman and the Economic Development Committee have done a commendable job of looking at those companies that are good fits and bringing in where we can, whether it be the data centers or the development at Ben Hill or a number of other things. But it's a process that it builds momentum over time, and we are gaining some traction on that.
And that's the key, because we've got to stay ahead of the fire
Absolutely.
departments that we're gonna
Absolutely.
need, that we're gonna be housing, the school and making a better, education and the safety of all of our
Yeah,
citizens.
and I think it again goes back to one of the real reasons for my initiative is that every year, for the past 3 years or so, we've seen tax increases. Last year it was 11%, the year before was 2%, the year before was 4%. We've had assessments increase 24% in the past year or so. And to quote the Board of Supervisors last year, it's like, well, we had unexpected stuff in the nth hour. And you guys know, it's life, it's business. You always have unexpected stuff, but you have to plan accordingly and be proactive about it. We are coming into increasingly challenging. I can tell you the demand for services and the demand to do those things is gonna increase. Your taxes are likely not gonna decrease, and I'm gonna do all that I can to see how we can be the most judicious about keeping our taxes affordable, reasonable, and responding to their services in a good, fiscally responsible way.
Thank you, Angela, I really appreciate it. Well, I'm a Fauquier High School graduate, somewhere in between Angela and Duke, so.
And her sister, I graduated with her sister.
Yeah. She did. Alrighty, well, now we get the pleasure to hear from Paul Petroskas, who is running for Marshall District Supervisor. Paul.
Hello, I'm Paul Petroskas, and I'm running for the position of County Supervisor for the Marshall District. I want to thank Marshall Business and Resident Association for inviting me to participate tonight in Candidates Night. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I want to thank my wife Karen, and she told me to write in gorgeous here. I want to thank my gorgeous wife Karen, my daughter Summer, and my son William for all the support they've given me these last few months. To get onto the ballot for the November election, I had to get 125 qualified signatures on a petition and submit that petition to the county registrar. To get those 125 signatures, my wife and I knocked door to door. We went from Paris through Upperville, down through Marshall, into the outskirts of Warrenton. We knocked on over 500 doors. The common theme people told us was that the real estate taxes are too high and that the county was spending too much. We talked with a retired couple on Iron Bit Drive whose property taxes went up over 10% in 1 year. It's crushing their household budget. I'm running as a taxpayer advocate. I'm running to make changes in policies of the county that will encourage balanced growth between homeowners, landowners, the government, and business. Each budget cycle brings confrontation between the spending demands of the county government and the unwillingness of the homeowner to suffer yet another round of real estate tax increases. The cost of county government steadily grows. It's like the plant in the movie The Little Shop of Horrors that just wants to be fed more money, more money, more money, more money, and it doesn't care where it gets it from. Unfortunately for homeowners, the Board of Supervisors view the homeowner as the taxpayer of last resort. On a relative basis, the average annual per capita increase in the cost of county government between 2011 and 2015 inclusive was 1.5%. The average annual per capita increase in the cost of county government between 2016 and 2020 inclusive jumped to 2.4% per year. This is a 60 percentage point increase in the per capita cost of county government over the last 5 years versus the previous 5-year period. The county government is getting disproportionately larger. It's getting more expensive to live in Fauquier County. The county government is funded by real estate tax, personal property tax, sales tax, and business tax. While the personal property tax and sales tax rates have remained constant, and the tax dollars collected by each of these two taxes have risen over the last 10 years to keep pace with county spending, tax dollars collected by the business license tax has remained flat over the last 10 years. The shortfall in the business license tax is made up for by an increase in real estate tax. 10 years ago, the budget for business license tax was $1.4 million. The real estate tax was $85 million, a ratio of 60 to 1. For each dollar in business tax collected, the homeowner paid $60 in real estate tax. In 2020, the business license tax was budgeted at $1.5 million. The real estate tax was $100 million, a ratio of 67 to 1. For each dollar of business tax collected, the homeowner will pay $67. This illustrates that over the last 10 years, the tax base has become less diversified and more narrow. Unfortunately, as county government steadily grew over the past 10 years, and business license tax remained flat, $1.4 million in 2011, $1.5 million in 2020, this created a shortfall in revenue. This result has been to shift the tax burden onto homeowners. The temporary saving grace for homeowners and the Board of Supervisors alike these last 4 years has been a surge in personal property taxes collected, trending above the long-term average on a common-size basis, most likely the result of trickle-down economics. It's reasonable to assume that the surge in personal property taxes collected above historical norms over the last 4 years has contributed a windfall to the county. In other words, if personal property tax collected was at historical norms, the Board of Supervisors would have had to find additional tax revenue for each of the last 4 years. Long-term budgets should not count on short-term financing. Sources of funds, a broad and diversified tax base for supporting the county budget is only part of the problem for taxpayers. On the other side of the equation, government spending, we need to separate the needs from the wants. The county budget is a little bit like your budget at home, but with more zeros. You have the things you have to pay for, like the mortgage and rent, groceries, and the electric bill. These are your needs. You may want to get a new TV, but if you don't have enough money to pay the electric bill, you don't borrow money to buy a new TV. If the county does not have enough money to pay teachers 100% of market rate, why is it borrowing money to pay for a new sports complex? In December 2018, the Board of Supervisors voted to spend $13 million on a sports complex in Warrenton, plus another $3.5 million in the future to build a restroom, $16.5 million total. The Board of Supervisors borrowed $8.7 million to fund the project. When the government borrows money, it's because they do not have enough money on hand to pay the bills. When the government borrows money, that's a tax increase that hasn't happened yet. Although the real estate tax rate dropped in 2018, real estate taxes were increased through the use of borrowing. Not only were taxes increased by the amount of money borrowed, but also by the amount of interest to be paid back. In January 2019, Superintendent of Schools Dr. Jack declared a state of emergency. Too many teachers were leaving the system, replacements cannot be found. It is reasonable to speculate, given that teachers are still not 100% of market rate, that the next budget cycle will require a tax increase to pay for a raise in teacher salaries. If you cannot pay for the need of teacher salaries, then why does the current Board of Supervisors borrowing money to pay for a want, the sports complex? Over the last 10 years, the Parks and Recreation budget took $37 million. Over that same period, the combined budgets for agricultural and economic development was $6.5 million. The budget for Parks and Recreation is 5.7 times larger than for development. Parks and Recreation is an annual expense. Development is an investment. Changes in county policies to promote balanced development can result in a larger tax base and lower tax increases. Permanent increases in the cost of the county's budget require a long-term plan to pay for those increases. A surge in personal property tax collected is not a long-term plan. Continuing the same policies that have resulted in tax base being out of balance and narrow is not a long-term plan. Raising the real estate tax rate each year should not be a long-term plan. Our platform, a platform of business growth and fiscal prudence, is a long-term plan. Our platform is the only platform that plans to grow and diversify the tax base. Our platform is the only platform that addresses both sides of the equation, the cost of county government and the growth in the business tax base. If we simplify the budget equation to county budget equals property tax plus business tax, it becomes easy to see that for each dollar of business tax revenue collected due to a larger and more robust business tax base, real estate tax is reduced by $1. The ratio is a 1-to-1 reduction. Our platform is a platform of free markets with lower taxation and less government interference. Our platform is a platform of protected property rights. Our platform supports the expansion of current business and the creation of new business. Our platform wants to change outdated policies that lead to an unbalanced and narrow tax base by expanding the business base to create revenue that will supplement the taxes paid by homeowners. The plan does not propose to raise the business tax rate. We want the county government to help people prosper, not make them poorer. We propose the expansion of both agribusiness and agritourism. One supports the other and both fit in with the rural characteristics of the county. Healthy agri-based businesses are self-sustaining conservationism. Business can grow in a county, and the county can still remain rural. Balanced growth is the key. The plan is to grow the business base. The goal is to restore a broad and balanced tax base. The aim is to ease the tax burden on the homeowner. I'm Paul Petroskas, and I'm running for county supervisor in the Marshall District. I'm running as a taxpayer advocate. I'm running as the only candidate on the November ballot that has lowering the growth rate in real estate tax as my priority. I'm the only candidate on the ballot that has a plan to lower the growth rate in real estate taxes. I'm the only candidate on the ballot without any special interest group endorsement. My only interest is the general welfare of the people of the Marshall District and Fauquier County. The only endorsement I am seeking is the endorsement of the people of the Marshall District. It is the only endorsement that matters. I am asking for your vote November 5th so that together we can bring back a balanced tax base, fiscal prudence, and a homeowner-friendly budget. Thank you.
How would your election help small business?
Well, we would try to get rid of the county policies that restrict small business and maybe enlarge the areas in which small businesses can grow. Small business growth is a key to supplementing the tax base. And if you can't supplement the tax base, then homeowners are going to pick up the balance year after year after year. You have to make a change. You have to take the politics out of the planning stage and put business in the planning stage. You have to replace the politics.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question. What would you do about the Marshall Main Street project if elected as Marshall District Supervisor?
Probably nothing, as far as I know. The project is almost wrapped up. I think all the funding is complete. Mary Lee has, or will be, submitting that out to bids pretty soon. So I guess from Mary Lee's point of view, it just depends on what the bids come back versus what they have budgeted for that. But I can tell you how I would have approached the project. First, I would have went to our neighbors in Middleburg, because they recently did a similar project, and asked them, did it help? Did it increase business? Did it not increase business? I do a stress test on the businesses in town. I would ask them, if you lost 25% of your business for 6 months because the sidewalks were torn up and the streets were torn up, would you still be here at the end of the year? Can you survive the construction process? And then looking at it from a purely business point of view, we do a payback calculation. If the cost of the project is $6 million and taxes created or generated by businesses on Main Street are $600,000 a year, it would take 10 years to pay back. That's about a 7% return on your investment. It's probably a doable project. If taxes collected by the county from businesses on Main Street are $100,000 a year, payback period is much longer, your return on investment is much shorter, and maybe the county has better places to allocate its capital. Maybe on small businesses rather than businesses located on Main Street that already are established. Maybe on businesses that need some help.
Okay, thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. All right, Laura Galante, would you please come up? Thank you. Laura is our candidate running for state delegate, House of Delegates.
Yes. Thank you. What troopers to still be here this late at a great community meeting. I will go in the same line as Sheriff Mosier and Angela and say the last thing I did in this room, which was run our annual 4-H meeting. We kick it off in here, and I run the Marshall Cloverbud Clubs. And for those that don't know what a Cloverbud is, that is a 4-H'er from 5 to 9 who has endless energy and is only focused on when they get to pet animals on the field trip. And the meeting we kicked off in here was about corn. It's how I was able to keep them focused for 20 minutes. And there were corn kernels everywhere. So I am still looking around this room, making sure they're not there. Nonetheless, I live here in Marshall. I'm about 4 miles outside of town, and I live with my husband and son there on our small farm. And I run a cybersecurity business. I consult for governments, business councils, and other entities that are focused on how they look into cyber intelligence and cybersecurity problems. I have been in the space for 12 years. I was one of the early people on the Pentagon's cyber account, and then moved into the private sector in 2012 to lead a team of 90 intelligence analysts focused on how we keep America safe in cyberspace from our adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran abroad. I have been here in Marshall loving our sense of community and how we position ourselves in a small community, in a rural district, the 18th district that I'm running for, and do that effectively at the state level. And that means building trust in our politics around the issues that are right in front of us. Here's how I see it. We need to get serious about what kind of jobs will be here in the future so that the families and kids that want to stay in our area have those opportunities. To me, that's jobs in the trades and technical training. And I'm glad that Duke brought CTE, Career and Technical Education, out. We're doing it well, let's do more of it. Let's make sure that we build out partnerships with small businesses, large businesses, and the like to make sure that kids don't just have a single track of college or nothing. We've got a lot of jobs here that pay well, that are entrepreneurial. We're going to have a 21% need for plumbers, steam fitters, and pipe fitters just in Virginia over the next 10 years. We have a lot of opportunities, and we need to make sure kids see those choices. The next piece is on healthcare costs. Everyone has a story of walking into a doctor's office and not knowing if you're leaving with a $70 bill or a $700 bill or sometimes $7,000 bill. And a piece of this is, as small business owners, like so many of us are here, we're trying to figure out how to treat our employees well and make sure they get good health care benefits, but not go bankrupt yourself trying to get those health care benefits covered. And in Richmond, what we can do on health care costs is see that transparency is put into the policies of doctors' offices, of insurance policies, of drug prices, so that you don't walk out not knowing what your pricing is going to be. That's a place where the state can have a really effective role. While the federal mess that is healthcare right now kind of continues on, we can chip away at this and work on the costs and affordability in Richmond. Another piece is on education. Now, I am also a proud public school product of Fairfax County Public Schools, about 27 miles that way, from elementary school up through UVA. And I think our investment in our public schools is continually one of the best that we've ever made in the country. But in Virginia in particular, we are suffering from a teacher pay gap, particularly in Fauquier County, that hits us hard on teacher retention. We're losing 10% of our teachers to Prince William, to Loudoun, to nearby counties, and a piece of that is in Richmond, where the composite index, the state funding formula, does not help Fauquier get the operating costs that Duke needs to make sure that our teachers get paid and our students can still go into nice schools. So I think we need to take a look at that. And that's an important piece of what I would drive in Richmond, so that Fauquier benefits from state dollars that can go into our operating costs and our teacher salaries. Finally, this is near and dear to my heart as an internet person. All of us have a story about internet, but here's the facts. 85% of Faukier's businesses have fewer than 5 people. Okay, we're all small business owners practically. What is the main priority that the Chamber of Commerce and these 85% of companies want? Good internet. That's how we plan for the jobs. That's how we have small businesses. That's how the mom in my 4-H club doesn't have to turn down the job that lets her work from home, right? And the way that we build out better internet in this county is we look seriously at the dark fiber, the good stuff, the actual fiber optic cable that's running all over this district. Bob right up here always reminds me, the little Verizon building sitting across from the post office in the Plains is one of the main substations of the East Coast internet backbone. We're sitting on the right stuff to hook up the rest of Fauquier County. We've been pushing this problem down to the county level, and God bless Supervisor Gerhardt especially, and Mary Lee, and the rest of the supervisor board that's been working really hard on this issue. But they need an ally in Richmond who's not going to take bad technology answers for granted and is going to put some pressure on Comcast and Verizon, who hold the keys to that network and have kept a lot of the smaller companies that find it profitable and competitive to hook up the less dense areas like ours. And that's what you'll find in me and my advocacy in Richmond. I am common sense before I'm anything else. I think good ideas don't have a D or an R next to them, and I am someone who wants to look at all angles of a problem and hear all the voices associated with what we can do, not just in Richmond, but in our community. I have been going out to meetings. I've loved coming to this one. I was telling you that I haven't been out since I think February, but was able to attend a couple times last year, and it's always a lively discussion. It's, I think, the safest thing to say, and it's been a great place to take on community problems. If I haven't had a chance to meet you and we don't get to answer questions, I would certainly love it. I think everyone's probably driven past our campaign office in Marshall at this point. So feel free to stop in anytime. We're right next to Red Truck. Thank you.
We have a couple questions for you. What plans do you have regarding conservation?
Yes. So how we conserve our rural landscape here is at the front and center of so many of our minds. It's why we love it, it's why we stay, it's what attracts people to our region as well. I think that it's important that this isn't just about land and conservation easements, which are a key part of how we preserve it, but we also look at state level initiatives to keep our water clean, to keep our air clean, and I like the idea of joining with other states for a regional greenhouse gas initiative. Pollution doesn't really see state lines, last time I saw some, right? So I think it's important that we take the next step up and think about how Virginia can really be a leader on making sure that we've got the clean environment and the conservation mindset at a little bit of a larger scale than where we've been so far. And it's really important that we remain the steward of the land here in Fauquier that is at the heart of what we've been doing.
Thank you. And then one other question, which looks like it's a three-part question. Do you want it in three different parts or all?
Go for the whole thing and
Okay.
I'll go on it.
What are your thoughts on national gun registration? What are your ideal gun laws? How would you ensure that our Second Amendment rights are protected and that existing gun laws are enforced in the face of more and more pressure to increase gun control?
I think that's 4. No, it's a good question, and I think both the Second Amendment is important, and being able to drop your kids off at school and not be scared that they're not going to come home is important too, right? And we need someone who's got a common sense approach to safety issues here, right? And what you'll see with me is I want to look at what's coming up in the legislature, and I think there's a lot of confusion, right? There's a lot of focus on what a gun looks like or what a firearm looks like sometimes versus its functionality. Let's make sure we really get into the facts. I think it's important that we have basic steps like background checks that 94% of Americans support to make sure that we've got a basic understanding of where firearms are registered. And I think safe storage is a place where we haven't had enough discussion. As anybody, as a responsible gun owner knows, you make sure you know where your firearm is at all time. I worked at the Pentagon for years, and that's rule number 1. You know where your firearm is, where your weapon is, and you know how it's kept. And I think safe storage and a tax holiday on safes would be a really important common sense measure that we can start taking right now.
Thank you, and I think you have time for a question
From the audience? Sure. Yes?
I don't know whose jurisdiction it would be in, but I have this lingering sort of cloud of wonder how the lotteries say that so much goes to education. And I'd like to see some black and white print on that, because it doesn't look like it comes through the way that it should.
I'm glad you asked this. I think it's one of the most deceptive deals in the Commonwealth. So back in the 80s, the original trade-off for Virginia getting into the lottery is that the lottery winnings would be added to the state education budget.
That's right.
Here's what happens. The same money that comes in the lottery pot gets pulled out of the general budget, and then education is thrown into the general budget. It's not going on top for schools.
That's right.
And that is not the deal back in the 80s that anyone bargained for, and that's an easy way for us to get some money back in the education budget and for the lottery to not be falsely advertising that your dollars are going to schools when they're really not. They're going back into the general budget. So thank you for asking that. I think that's an important piece that should get a lot more noise in Richmond.
Thank you.
I am so glad that you recognize that. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for recognizing the fact that CTE is utterly so important right
It's our
now.
future. It's a great place.
In Fauquier County, we believe that our CTE program is second to none. We've had national awards in auto mechanics. We've had national awards in culinary arts. We have electricians, nurses. Now we've got a cyber security program.
Liberty.
Liberty. So
You need
Right.
carpenters.
We need, yes.
You're
In
right.
Little
And
Washington,
we
there's
still-
someone who will hire as many
we still
carpenters
have
that we
cobblers,
train.
we still have welders, we are still doing it all. And like I said,
Computer
our
automated
CTE program is
design,
second to none.
Could I chime in on this? Because I have like a big thoughts about this, that CTE is not second to degrees in colleges. My brothers on Michigan are all the rednecks. But I love rednecks because if everything goes to pot, which we've looked in the face a few times the last couple of years, the rednecks are the ones who are gonna pull it all out. They can wire telephone poles, they can drive gasoline trucks, they can hijack gasoline trucks. They'll get it done. And so the trades are what help the infrastructure and what help us get things done. They're not secondary to
Nope, not
higher
at all.
education.
Not at all.
They're a complement.
I'd love if the Fauquier Times, since we have them here, publishes at the end of this school year, people going into careers in the trades and specialty trades, not just who's going to UVA and William and Mary and GMU, because I think that would go a long way to bring back what is a really healthy, wonderful part of our economy and a really important trades
There's money
vocation.
in the trades.
Yes, there is.
There's
I'd
money
like
in
to
it.
chime in
Yeah.
for that too. I help people get mortgages. That's what I've done for 30 years. And I met the nicest gentleman and I said, why didn't you go to college? And he said, because I wanted to work on Mercedes-Benz. I went to North Carolina. He now works on Mercedes-Benz, is now a team leader of 9 people that work on Mercedes-Benz, and he makes $200,000 a year. So we need that everywhere.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's my ending.
Okay, so now it's our pleasure to introduce Ronnie Ross. He is the candidate for Virginia State Senate.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all so much for staying. I'm very aware of the time. As a classroom teacher, I know people can only sit still for so long. Okay, even adults, right? Even adults. What I normally do is I tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running, and then I open up for questions. But that last discussion about CTE was so great. I actually want to start there, if that's okay. Both of my in-laws, neither of them have four-year college degrees. They will out-earn me forever, right? I am a teacher, and they make so much more money than I do. One is in construction, and one got a 2-year nursing degree. And that's great. I remember I walked into a school in Frederick County, and I went to the guidance, I won't say which one. I went to the guidance counselors, and there were all these pennants for different colleges where the students are going to. What about students who are going to college? Oh, we also put what branch of the military they're going into.
Yeah.
And I say, great. But what about people who might not be going into the military or into colleges? Do you know Virginia is about to build the East Coast's largest wind farm out off our shores? Do you know how many jobs are about to be available? There is already a deficit of welders down at the beach that we can't fill. I want Virginians to have those jobs, right? So anyway, I can't say enough about CTE and how CTE is in many ways the future. So I thought I would start by echoing there and giving a ditto there. So again, my name is Ronnie Ross, and unlike so many of you in this room, I did not grow up here. I grew up on the other side of the mountain, and I don't mean Clark County. I mean the Appalachian Mountains, right? I grew up near Wheeling, West Virginia on the Ohio side, if you know where that is. So my roots are in Appalachia. And my first job was actually working grounds at my family's steel cutting business. So I feel like you can't get more Appalachian than that. But I knew I always wanted to do something else. I wanted to teach, okay? And so I graduated college in the middle of the Great Recession. And I followed a job and a girl out here to Virginia 10 years ago. I lived behind the Safeway in those townhomes, if you know where that is. The job went really well. The girl, not so much. Okay? but I'm currently married with a child. And do we have any teachers or former teachers in the audience tonight by any chance? There's normally a few. Okay, great, there's not. So I know you all love your jobs, but I'm going to be honest. I think I have the best job because I get to watch children learn. And there is nothing better than the look on a child's face when they realize they can do something that they didn't think they knew how to do. And that's what I thought I would be doing with my life. But then something happened. My wife and I realized we were going to have a baby. And that has a great way of focusing your mind on the community. And I knew I loved this place, but I started to realize there were some things I thought we could do a little better. And tonight you've heard about some of them. We've heard a lot about teacher pay. My focus is actually on school funding. Out of the 50 states, Virginia is near the bottom in per pupil funding. And that didn't seem right to me, and so I wanted to do something about that. Over 25% of rural Virginians don't have broadband. And again, that didn't quite seem right. I have a really rare disease. Only 20,000 people in the United States have it. It's a vocal cord disease. If I don't get periodic surgeries, it will kill me. And so I would go into the doctor's office, and like we've heard tonight, I didn't know what my charges were going to be. I'd go to the hospital to get surgery, and I'd walk in, and they'd say, okay, here's how much your surgery is. I had no idea, and that didn't seem right. My prescriptions were off the charts, and again, that didn't seem right. So I was complaining about these things to my wife in the car one day, and she said something to me that I bet many of you have heard before in your life. Stop complaining and do something about it. And you know, I married someone who's smarter than me, so I decided I better listen to her. And at the time, right, we had a little 2-month-old in the back of the car, and I said, "You're nuts." And she said, "Just please understand, I will always have your back, and you can always just look in your son's eyes and know why you're doing this." But then I realized that was a little selfish, right? Because there's so many sons and daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, and us out here who this affects. And so I started running, and I myself have already knocked over 10,000 doors. Our team has knocked over 52,000 doors at this point. And what I'm hearing on the doors are those same things that I thought whenever I started this process. That people love this area, but there's just some things that we need to do better. And that's why I'm running. And so what I thought I would do is not take up any more of your time with my narrative. I thought I'd turn it over to her questions, and if there aren't any for me, I'm happy to take yours here. I'm a teacher by nature. Let's be participative. Yeah.
We just have one last question written.
Last question of the evening. Okay.
And it's the same one that Laura had.
Yeah, of course.
What are your thoughts on national gun registration? What are your ideal gun laws? And how would you ensure that our Second Amendment rights are protected and that existing gun laws are enforced in the face of more and more pressure to increase gun control?
Yeah, so I love Laura's answer. I'm going to add to that a little bit. Do you all know where Clark Brothers is? They have a big sign of my opponent. I laugh when I go in there because that's where I shoot, okay? And they say, well, you know, we support this center. I said, I know, all right? So I want to start there, right? I grew up in Appalachia. I know how to use a firearm, okay? And I like it. I currently don't have a firearm in my house because I have a 2-year-old, and that's my decision, right? Eventually I'll get him a 22. We'll go out shooting. It'll be great. So I get this question a lot on the doors. I'll knock and I'll say, hi, my name is Ronnie Ross. I'm running to represent you. And I'll say, what's your most important issue? What do you care about? They might say, Second Amendment. I said, great. I love my right to bear arms. They say, how are you on that? I say, well, I have some things I would like to do to maybe, keep us safer but not infringe on your Second Amendment rights. And you tell me if you agree. And I say, well, I do think we need universal background checks. 21% of gun sales in Virginia occur without a background check. That's something I would like to see closed. And everybody but one person that says, sure. I think that makes sense. I say, do you know in-home daycares are not required to lock up their firearms under Virginia law? I said, no. I said, I think that should be required. We've had a child die because he got into the daycare's guns. I would like to not see that happen. He said, great. I said, the majority of gun deaths are actually suicides. It's about 60%. And so I said, whenever I go to buy my little guy, his 22, If I have to wait 48 or 72 hours before I get that gun to make sure someone in crisis doesn't get it, I'm willing to wait that. Are you? And they say, sure. And I say, and here's the last thing, and Laura touched on this. I think gun storage education is huge. So I would actually say, let's have a tax holiday for safes $1,000 and under. I think that's great. You can get a biometric safe for about $300. I know a lot of people don't like that because if your thumb's sweaty, it won't read it, right? It's like your phone. So maybe you want a different kind of safe. Great. We tried to get a tax holiday through the General Assembly. It didn't go through. So those are my 4 priorities when it comes to gun safety issues.
And we have time for a couple more questions.
Yeah, does anyone else? Yeah, please.
Well, I'd like to ask this question just in general. Why are people afraid of background checks? You know, I've had to get security clearances, and you give them every place you've traveled to, every person you've known, and I'm happy to give that because I get a security clearance and I can work on government contracts.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why anyone would say, I don't want anyone to know what my background is because I want to have a gun, but I don't want to tell you anything. But I mean, are they afraid of something or?
So I agree with you, but it's my job to represent everybody in my district, right? So I try to be empathetic and I try to listen as much as I can. And generally, the one man who said no to background checks, what he said is that right's enshrined in the Constitution in a way other rights are not, and that's why he thought that couldn't be an infringement. I tend to rationalize like you, but it's my job to understand his perspective, and that's what he told me.
Well, I appreciate that, because I always wonder, I always look at it and think, what are they afraid of that's going to be in their background that's going to keep them from getting
No,
in trouble?
I think it's just viewed as a different kind of right. That's all.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Well, thank you so much. I've appreciated your attention all the way through this evening's program, so thank you.
All right, thank y'all for coming, and there's plenty of time to hang out with the candidates, meet and greet. You can ask me your questions one-on-one and get to know them a little bit better. We have some cookies and water back there, but first, we'd like to end with the pledge of allegiance. So if everyone will stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.